It's one of the most iconic scenes in horror history. A woman, cornered, hysterical, weakly swinging a baseball bat at the man who was once her husband. Her face is a mask of pure terror. Her eyes, wide and bloodshot, stream with real tears. Her screams are ragged, primal, born from a place beyond performance. This is Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. For decades, the world praised the genius of a director who could elicit such a raw, authentic performance. But the truth, buried for years in rare behind-the-scenes footage and painful testimony, is far darker. The terror you see on screen was not acting. It was the documented result of a 13-month psychological ordeal, orchestrated by Kubrick himself. The famous baseball bat scene required a record-breaking 127 takes. But what the record books don't tell you is the cost of each one. What happens to a person when they are forced to exist in a state of peak terror, 12 hours a day, for over a year? This is not a story about making a movie. This is a story about the systematic dismantling of a human being, captured forever on film. We will examine the evidence, the eyewitness accounts, and the chilling footage that reveals a hidden truth. Stanley Kubrick didn't just direct Shelley Duvall. He broke her. To understand the depth of the tragedy, you first had to understand the woman who walked onto that set. Before she was Wendy Torrance, Shelley Duvall was the unlikely queen of 1970s New Hollywood. Discovered at a party in her native Texas by legendary director Robert Altman, she wasn't a typical starlet. She was gangly, doe-eyed, with a quirky, unforgettable presence. Altman saw something unique in her, a raw, unpolished authenticity. He cast her in his 1970 film Brewster McCloud, and a powerful creative partnership was born. Over the next 7 years, she became Altman's muse, appearing in classics like McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Nashville. Her talent wasn't just in her unconventional looks, it was in her ability to project a fragile, deeply human vulnerability. In 1977, her performance in Altman's psychological drama Three Women was so profound, so deeply felt, that it earned her the Best Actress award at the Cannes Film Festival. She was at the peak of her powers, a respected, celebrated artist, lauded for her singular talent. So when the call came from Stanley Kubrick, it felt like the ultimate validation. Kubrick was a titan, a meticulous genius famous for films like 2001, A Space Odyssey and A Clockwork Orange. To work with him was a dream for any serious actor. According to interviews she gave at the time, Duvall was ecstatic. She moved to London, ready to collaborate with a master, to create something immortal. She arrived at Elstree Studios in 1978, a confident, award-winning actress, known for her bubbly personality and collaborative spirit. She had no idea she was walking into a psychological crucible, a year-long experiment in terror from which her spirit would never fully escape. The woman who arrived to film The Shining was not the same one who would leave. The Overlook Hotel was not just a set, it was an environment. A meticulously crafted world of isolation and dread. And from the very beginning, Stanley Kubrick seemed determined to make that dread real for his leading lady. The first warning sign was the isolation. In Vivian Kubrick's behind-the-scenes documentary, Making The Shining, the atmosphere is palpable. Kubrick's method was one of complete control, but it was applied with a chilling specificity. While Jack Nicholson was treated as a collaborator, lauded and joked with, Duvall was deliberately ostracized. According to crew members and Vivian Kubrick's own footage, the director gave explicit instructions to the crew. Do not sympathize with Shelley. Don't console her. Don't tell her she's doing a good job. He wanted her to feel utterly alone, as helpless and abandoned as her character. This wasn't just tough direction, it was psychological warfare. Kubrick would berate her performance in front of the entire crew, telling her she was wasting everyone's time. He would change her lines at the last minute, handing her pages of new dialogue just before a take, increasing her anxiety and ensuring she never felt stable or confident. In one haunting scene from the making of documentary, Kubrick is heard telling her, "You've been on the film for a year. Why can't you get it right?" Her response is a fragile, exhausted whisper. The contrast in his treatment of his two leads was stark. Jack Nicholson, in an interview with Rolling Stone, described his relationship with Kubrick as a perfect collaboration. He was encouraged to improvise, to bring his own manic energy to the role. Duvall was given the opposite. She was there to be a vessel for Wendy's terror, and Kubrick believed the only way to achieve that was to make her feel it for real. He wasn't directing a performance, he was provoking a reaction. Every tear, every stutter, every exhausted sob was a testament to his success. He was chipping away at her, piece by piece, breaking down the confident actress who had arrived in London and replacing her with a terrified, nervous wreck. Why? Was it artistic perfectionism or something darker? He told Nicholson he believed actors needed to be tricked into a great performance. But what he subjected Duvall to went far beyond a trick. It was a sustained campaign to erode her sense of self, to blur the line between the character's nightmare and her own. A film shoot scheduled for 17 weeks spiraled into 56. An entire year spent inside the claustrophobic world of the Overlook Hotel, under the relentless gaze of its creator. As the production dragged on, the psychological pressure on Shelley Duvall intensified into a full-blown physical and mental crisis. The constant stress began to manifest in terrifying ways. According to her own accounts in the book The Complete Kubrick, Duvall became physically ill. She suffered from nervous exhaustion and anxiety attacks. Her hair began to fall out in clumps. She would arrive on set each day knowing she would have to cry for up to 12 hours, a process that left her perpetually dehydrated and drained. She told journalist Roger Ebert, "After a while, your body rebels. It says, stop doing this to me. I don't want to cry every day." But Kubrick wouldn't stop. The point of no return was the infamous baseball bat scene on the grand staircase. This single, 2-minute scene took over 3 weeks to film. Take after take, for weeks on end, Duvall had to ascend the stairs backwards, swinging the bat, crying, and screaming in a state of manufactured hysteria. The raw footage captured by Vivian Kubrick is almost unwatchable. Between takes, Duvall is seen slumped over, her body trembling, her face pale. She pleads with Kubrick, her voice thin and reedy, "It's so difficult." He offers no comfort, only cold, clinical direction. The 127 takes were not about perfecting a technical aspect. They were about wearing her down until there was nothing left of Shelley, only Wendy. Until the performance was gone and only raw, authentic anguish remained. She was no longer acting a breakdown, she was having one, and Kubrick was there to capture it. Co-star Scatman Crothers, who also reportedly suffered under Kubrick's demanding style, was one of the few to offer her comfort. But for the most part, she was alone. The crew, following orders, kept their distance. Jack Nicholson, while not the target of Kubrick's ire, later admitted the shoot was difficult for everyone, but particularly for Shelley. He told reporters she was the one who had to cry and be terrified all the time. She was trapped. Trapped on the set, trapped in the UK far from her support system, and trapped inside the mind of Wendy Torrance. The bubbly, confident woman from Texas was gone. In her place was a fragile, terrified person whose real-life suffering was about to be sold to the world as entertainment. The tragedy of Shelley Duvall is not marked by a single event, but by its conclusion. The moment her authentic suffering was immortalized on celluloid, mistaken for art. The final weeks of shooting were the most brutal, focusing on the film's terrifying climax. The scene where Jack Torrance chops through the bathroom door with an axe is a masterclass in cinematic tension. For Shelley Duvall, it was a living nightmare. The crew used a real, heavy fire axe and a door that was only partially reinforced. According to on-set reports, the terror on her face as Nicholson swings the axe, screaming "Here's Johnny," is entirely genuine. She later stated in an interview for the book Kubrick by Michel Simont, "I was in and out of ill health because the stress of the role was so great. Stanley pushed me and prodded me further than I've ever been pushed before." Think about the sheer physical and emotional reality of that. For days on end, she was trapped in a small bathroom set, screaming at the top of her lungs as a man, her colleague, swung an axe at the door, splintering wood flying through the air. The sound was deafening, the threat felt real. Her screams became so raw that she lost her voice repeatedly. The crew kept pots of honey and lemon on hand just so she could continue. In Vivian Kubrick's documentary, there's a moment after a particularly grueling take where Shelley lies on the floor, nearly catatonic from exhaustion, while the crew resets around her. No one helps her. No one comforts her. She is simply a component of the scene, an object to be reset. When filming finally wrapped after 13 agonizing months, there was no celebration for Duvall, only collapse. She had given everything to the role, her health, her sanity, her sense of self. What the world would see as a brilliant, if unsettling, performance, was for her a permanent record of the worst year of her life. The tragedy was not that she played a victim on screen, it was that she became one in reality. Stanley Kubrick had gotten exactly what he wanted. A perfect portrait of a woman's complete psychological disintegration. He had succeeded, but the cost was immeasurable. The film would go on to be a horror classic, but it left a ghost in its wake. The ghost of the artist Shelley Duvall once was. When The Shining was released in 1980, it was met with commercial success and critical debate. Stanley Kubrick was hailed, once again, as a visionary. Jack Nicholson's performance was iconic. But Shelley Duvall's was polarizing. Some critics, unaware of the behind-the-scenes reality, called her performance over the top and unconvincing. The ultimate insult came in 1981, when she was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Actress. The very organization meant to satirize bad performances failed to recognize that what they were seeing wasn't bad acting, it was the absence of it. It was raw, unvarnished trauma, and they mocked her for it. This public dismissal of her suffering was a profound injustice. The industry that had profited from her breakdown now ridiculed her for it. Following The Shining, Duvall continued to work, even producing the acclaimed children's show Fairy Tale Theater. But friends and colleagues noted a change. The vibrant, confident woman was gone, replaced by someone more fragile, more reclusive. According to a 2021 profile in The Hollywood Reporter, the experience left her with lasting trauma. She gradually withdrew from public life, leaving Hollywood behind for a quiet, secluded existence in Texas. She had survived the Overlook Hotel, but a part of her remained trapped there forever. The media frenzy faded, and the world moved on, but for Duvall, the psychological echoes of that year-long ordeal never did. The film became a cultural touchstone, a masterpiece of horror. But the story of its creation, and the human price paid for that masterpiece, remained a footnote, a dark secret whispered about by industry insiders but largely ignored by the public. For years, the story was just that, a story. A piece of dark Hollywood lore. Then, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Vivian Kubrick's Making The Shining, once a rare TV special, found new life on the internet. A new generation could now see with their own eyes the relentless pressure, the isolation, the cold, methodical way Kubrick broke down his actress. The footage became a key exhibit in a re-examination of Kubrick's legacy and the ethics of his methods. Psychologists and trauma experts, analyzing the documentary and Duvall's own accounts, have since identified Kubrick's techniques as classic examples of psychological abuse: gaslighting, isolation, and sustained emotional battery. What was once dismissed as the eccentricities of a genius was now being called out for what it was. This reassessment led to a small but significant act of redemption. In March 2022, nearly 42 years after the film's release, the Razzie Awards officially rescinded Shelley Duvall's nomination. The co-founders, John Wilson and Mo Murphy, released a statement acknowledging that the extenuating circumstances of Duvall's performance and Kubrick's treatment of her made the nomination inappropriate. It was a public admission that her pain was real and had been wrongly judged. Her case is now cited in broader conversations about on-set abuse and the mental health of actors. It serves as a chilling example of how the pursuit of art can be used to justify cruelty. The most credible explanation for what happened is not that Kubrick was simply a demanding director, but that he saw in Shelley Duvall the perfect instrument for the story he wanted to tell, and he was willing to sacrifice her well-being to achieve his vision. He didn't want a performance of terror, he wanted the real thing. And he got it. How is Shelley Duvall remembered today? For many, she is forever frozen in time, screaming in the halls of the Overlook Hotel. Her subsequent struggles with mental health, laid bare in a controversial 2016 interview on the Dr. Phil show, were seen by many as a second wave of exploitation. A public spectacle made of a private pain that began decades earlier on a cold London film set. But in recent years, there has been a groundswell of support, a collective desire to remember her not as a victim, but as a survivor and a talented artist who endured the unthinkable. The Shining remains a masterpiece, but it now carries a heavy asterisk. It forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. What is the human cost of great art? And who gets to decide if the price is worth paying? The film industry has learned some lessons, with on-set mental health coordinators and stricter conduct policies becoming more common. But the power dynamics that allowed this to happen still exist. Shelley Duvall's story is a chilling cautionary tale, a permanent record of a director's obsession and an actress' sacrifice. Her terror was real, her breakdown was real, and it's all there, preserved in every frame of the film, hiding in plain sight. This is more than just a dark chapter in film history. It's a testament to a woman who was pushed to the absolute edge, whose suffering was sold as fiction, and who reminds us that behind the greatest stories Hollywood tells, there are often hidden ones, far more terrifying than anything seen on screen.